Trump throws Middle East policy into turmoil over Syria. Washington, President Trump threw Middle East policy into turmoil with a series of conflicting signals on Monday as his vow to withdraw American forces from the region touched off an uprising among congressional Republicans and protests by America's allies. Defending his decision to clear the way for a Turkish military operation against America's Kurdish allies in northern Syria, Mr. Trump said it was time for us to get out and let others figure the situation out. But after Republican allies condemned the move, he pivoted sharply and said he would restrain Turkey. As I have stated strongly before, and just to reiterate, if Turkey does anything that I, in my great and unmatched wisdom, consider to be off limits, I will totally destroy and obliterate the economy of Turkey. I've done before, the president wrote on Twitter, without explaining what exactly he would consider off limits. Even after Mr. Trump walked back his decision, Senator Mitch McConnell, Republican of Kentucky and the majority leader, warned him against a precipitous withdrawal that would benefit Russia, Iran, President Bashar al-Assad of Syria and the Islamic State. Mr. McConnell sharply urged the president to exercise American leadership. Sign up for On Politics with Lisa Lehrer. A spotlight on the people reshaping our politics. A conversation with voters across the country. And a guiding hand through the endless news cycle, telling you what you really need to know. Sign up. A Defense Department official said that the president's threat to destroy the Turkish economy should remove any ambiguity about whether Mr. Trump had endorsed a Turkish attack on the Kurds. The Department of Defense made clear to Turkey, as did the president, that we do not endorse a Turkish operation in northern Syria, Jonathan Hoffman, a Pentagon spokesman, said in a statement. The U.S. Armed Forces will not support, or be involved in any operation. The herky-jerky policy pronouncements kept supporters, foreign leaders, military officers and his own aides off balance as they tried to interpret Mr. Trump's meaning and anticipate its consequences. The president has long agitated to get the United States out of what he considers fruitless overseas wars only to be pulled back to some extent by the national security establishment and congressional allies. In this case, Mr. Trump seemed to be responding instinctively to a comment by President Recep Tayyip Erdogan of Turkey near the end of a telephone call on Sunday. Rather than hold back Mr. Erdogan anymore, Mr. Trump promptly announced late that night that he would pull out American troops near the border who have served as a tripwire deterring Turkey from sending forces into Syria against Kurdish fighters allied with the United States. By Monday morning, he was bombarded with complaints from both Republicans and Democrats, who charged that such a move would abandon some of the United States' most loyal and effective allies in the region, while emboldening some of America's most threatening enemies. A look at who is affected by Trump's shift in Syria. If I didn't see Donald Trump's name on the tweet, I thought it was Obama's rationale for getting out of Iraq, Senator Lindsey Graham, Republican of South Carolina and usually one of the president's most vocal backers, said on Fox News. Editor's picks. What happened after the joke? A stand-up's harrowing tale. Saturday Night Live, Matthew Broderick joins the Trump team. Why Pedro Almodovar's newest film frightened his friends. As with President Barack Obama's decision to pull out American troops from Iraq in 2011, Mr. Graham said, Mr. Trump's withdrawal would create a vacuum for remnants of the Islamic State, Mr. Assad and others to surge forward again. This is a big win for Iran and Assad, a big win for ISIS, Mr. Graham said, using another term for the Islamic State. I will do everything I can to sanction Turkey if they step one foot in northeastern Syria. That will sever my relationship with Turkey. I think most of the Congress feels that way. Mr. Graham said he would also introduce a non-binding resolution asking Mr. Trump to reconsider his move, which he called short-sighted and irresponsible. The president's assertion that the Islamic State has been defeated is the biggest lie being told by the administration, Mr. Graham added. Representative Liz Cheney of Wyoming, a member of the House Republican leadership, called withdrawing United States forces from northern Syria a catastrophic mistake. Senator Marco Rubio, Republican of Florida, said it would be a grave mistake that will have implications far beyond Syria. Nikki R. Haley, Mr. Trump's former ambassador to the United Nations, joined the chorus. "We must always have the backs of our allies, if we expect them to have our back," she tweeted. "The Kurds were instrumental in our successful fight against ISIS in Syria. Leaving them to die is a big mistake. Turkey is not our friend." Senator Mitt Romney, Republican of Utah, shared a tweet from Mr. Graham and added his own thoughts. "The president's decision to abandon our Kurd allies in the face of an assault by Turkey is a betrayal," he wrote. "It says that America is an unreliable ally, it facilitates ISIS resurgence, and it presages another humanitarian disaster." Left virtually on his own, Mr. Trump found support on Capitol Hill from Senator Rand Paul, Republican of Kentucky and one of the president's staunchest defenders. Mr. Trump once again fulfills his promises to stop our endless wars and have a true America First foreign policy, Mr. Paul tweeted. Mr. Trump came to office promising to get the country out of overseas wars, contending that the military's involvement in Afghanistan, Iraq and elsewhere since the September 11, 2001, attacks had largely been a waste of lives and money, with little to show for it. A similarly sudden decision last winter to pull American troops out of Syria prompted Defense Secretary Jim Mattis to resign, and Brett McGurk, the special presidential envoy to the coalition fighting the Islamic State, accelerated his own planned departure in protest. The Senate, led by Mr. McConnell, relayed its displeasure in January by voting overwhelmingly to rebuke Mr. Trump over his planned withdrawal of military forces from Syria and Afghanistan. Mr. Trump later walked back his decision in Syria to some extent, but has been frustrated not to be doing more to extricate the United States from entanglements in the region. His supporters said the latest move should therefore not be a surprise and the Kurds had fair warning. The Kurdish forces in the area, part of the Syrian Democratic Forces, or SDF, have been the most reliable American ally in the region for years, a critical element in recapturing territory once controlled by the Islamic State. But Turkey has long considered the Kurdish fighters to be terrorists and has lobbied the United States to abandon support for them. The United States was supposed to be in Syria for 30 days, that was many years ago, Mr. Trump tweeted on Monday. "We stayed and got deeper and deeper into battle with no aim in sight. Now," he said, "it is time to leave. I held off this fight for almost 3 years, but it is time for us to get out of these ridiculous endless wars, many of them tribal, and bring our soldiers home," Mr. Trump wrote. "We will fight where it is to our benefit, and only fight to win. Turkey, Europe, Syria, Iran, Iraq, Russia and the Kurds will now have to figure the situation out." He offered little sympathy for the fate of America's Kurdish allies. "The Kurds fought with us," he wrote, "but were paid massive amounts of money and equipment to do so." Mr. Trump has been particularly irritated that the United States continues to pay to detain thousands of Islamic State fighters. For months, he has tried to pressure European states and others to take those fighters who originated from there, only to run into strong resistance. "Europe did not want them back, they said you keep them USA," Mr. Trump wrote. "I said no, we did you a great favor and now you want us to hold them in US prisons at tremendous cost. They are yours for trials." They again said no, thinking, as usual, that the US is always the sucker, on NATO, on trade, on everything. But if Turkey moves against the Kurds, the SDF could abandon camps to fight the Turks, potentially allowing some 10,000 captured Islamic State fighters, including 2,000 foreigners, to escape. United States military officers were trying to reassure the SDF in hopes of avoiding such a scenario. The United States has suspended long-standing efforts to create a safe zone in Syria near the Turkish border that would have kept Turkish forces and Syrian fighters at a distance from each other. But one State Department official who briefed reporters on the condition of anonymity under administration ground rules said that the United States was now controlling the airspace over northeast Syria in part to prevent Turkish aggression. The prospect that an American withdrawal would lead to a Turkish incursion alarmed European allies. The French and Germans issued statements expressing deep concern. A State Department official said the international reaction to a possible Turkish operation had been devastating and acknowledged it would destabilize the region. For now at least, the Syrian Defense Forces leadership has told American officials that it will continue to detain the Islamic State fighters and their families in makeshift camps in northern Syria. But a State Department official acknowledged that the best-trained guards could be pulled away in the event of conflict with Turkey. Most of the camps are farther south than where the Turkish forces have indicated they might go in Syria, outside the boundary of even the broadest safe zone that has been discussed. If the Kurdish guards flee advancing Turkish forces, the official said, then the administration expects the Turks to take over the detention centers. American counterterrorism specialists said on Monday that transferring counterterrorism responsibilities to a Turkish military force that has proved ill-trained and ill-equipped to conduct such operations in their own country would be disastrous and potentially reverse important victories by American troops and their Kurdish partners on the ground. It's hard to imagine Turkey has the capacity to handle securely and appropriately the detainees long held by the Syrian Kurds, and that's if Turkey even genuinely intends to try, said Joshua A. Geltzer, a former senior director for counterterrorism at the National Security Council under Mr. Obama. The release or escape of such detainees, he added, would instantly energize ISIS's efforts, already underway, to regroup and surge again.